Coffee time. Oh yeah, that's some good coffee. Some good ass coffee. Hello and welcome, I'm Peter and this is another Tekken Beginner's Fundamentals video. In this video, we will cover the topic of homing attacks and tracking moves. Shoot, this is the wrong topic. Hey, Crossroads, cut. Oh shit. I fucked up. This is the wrong topic. Take two. Hello and welcome, I'm Peter and welcome to another Tekken Beginner's Fundamentals video. In this video we will explore the topic of sidestepping and sidewalking. I finally got around to playing some more ranked games and found that a lot of beginners and even to some extent intermediate players Oh god. That intro is so fucked up. Anyways, I finally got around to playing some more ranked games and found that a lot of beginners and intermediate players limit their movement to mostly just forward dashing and back dashing. And honestly, if you're going to play this way, you might as well play something like, I don't know, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, Super Smash Brothers, or, I don't know, Crossroads. Help me out. What 2D games do kids play nowadays? Just show them here. Throw me some titles, please. So yeah, if you're going to play Tekken forwards and backwards and not involve any sort of sidestepping and sidewalking, you might as well play one of these topics that Crossroads has up here, hopefully. Anyways, in this video we will cover why and when we should use sideways movement, as well as some general good practice tips on how to get more comfortable moving laterally. I'll also give you some guides and tips and little hints here and there. As a reminder, if you enjoy learning Tekken or anything Tekken related or enjoy being entertained, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell icon below, and so you can be up to date on any new content I do and any content I release. Now, before we dive in, please keep in mind that this video is for beginners and it's a introduction really to sidestepping in Tekken, so I will not be covering advanced topics like sidestep ducking or sidestep blocking or sidestep some crazy options. So don't at me, all right? This is more or less to get people kind of acquainted with how to sidestep properly and how to get used to sidestepping and when to sidestep. First up, sidestepping. Sidestepping can be performed by simply tapping up or down to allow your character to move sideways in the Z space of the game. Hopefully you got this from the 101 movement video that I did. A good number of attacks in this game are actually quite linear. So simply performing a sidestep avoids them almost completely. Whether it's a lightning fast attack like a jab or a slow attack, more or less sidesteps can avoid them. Now, you're probably thinking, that's great, Peter, but when should I sidestep? I still don't know. Okay, I got you. For simplicity's sake, let's break this down, sidestepping, into two categories, all right? Defensive sidestepping and offensive sidestepping. Defensive sidestepping. This is by far the easier of the two to understand, so let's start here. While on the back foot of being pressured in up close, where the opponent's pressing, or out in neutral ground where nobody has an advantage, defensive sidestepping is exactly like it sounds. Stepping to avoid incoming pressure or incoming attacks. Many attacks in this game leave us in either a disadvantageous position on hit or unblock. So it's imperative to avoid these attacks by sidestepping. And here's one example that we see all the time, right? Check out this common situation. Something like jab, down forward 1, jab, down forward 1, and then some other attack, right? And I'm sure we've all have been here, okay? And with a single sidestep, we have a lot of different openings and a lot of different options where we can slip through our opponent's pressure. For example, we can step one of the jabs that our opponent does, like King here. We can step one of his jabs, or we can step the forward 2 by King, which on block leaves us in crouch and puts him at +2. This is a bad spot to be in, but we can avoid this if we sidestep. And we can avoid these attacks and be able to even whiff punish our opponent if we're fast enough. And whether it's them missing a jab and us getting a read on that, or them missing something big like a forward 2 and being able to launch that, what I'm saying here is there's opportunities. I'm not saying you have to launch punish every single whiff that your opponent does, because there's no way that you see a jab whiff and you're like, hop kick or something like that, right? Or jab, down forward 2. So it's really hard to do that, but I'm saying that there are lots of possibilities here for opportunities. And I'm merely using this as an exaggerated example to show how powerful sidesteps can be. And to be honest, all these examples that are playing, these are all to show how powerful sidestepping really can be. Now, additionally, some attack strings are safe, or rather inconsequentially punished when blocked, but can be punished much harder with the correct read and proper sidestep. When done correctly, we can create a whiff while defending and then launch punish it, which would be impossible if straight up blocked, right? There's some things in this game where if you block it, you only get such a tiny meager punish, versus sidestepping it, them being whiffed, and then launch punishing them. Think of sidestep as a sideways backdash, right? A lot of people understand that in the game you have to forward dash and backdash, but people don't think of sidestepping as a ways of sideways backdashing. So I want you to start thinking in this way. And I think as soon as you realize this, how powerful it is, it's super important, because everyone at the beginner ranks thinks of backdashing to create whiffs, but not really many people think of sidestepping to create whiffs and then whiff punishing. Offensive sidestepping. Oh boy, this concept is a little bit more convoluted and harder to understand, but I'll try my best to explain it. If you're trying to apply pressure against the opponent at, say, something like range 0 or range 1, your typical beginner pressure might look something like this. All right, you press some buttons, you press some more buttons, your attack gets blocked, your opponent takes their turn, you block, and then you pressure them back, and this turn taking goes back and forth until somebody gets either a launcher or a counter hit, right? Very standard stuff that we see at the beginner level. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this type of back and forth pressure, but what a whole lot of beginners, and even to some extent early intermediates, fail to realize is that there are more options than simply blocking, backdashing, and throwing out buttons. Oh, and dick jabs. So there are more to it than just that, right? Offensive sidestepping is the process of throwing out a few attacks here and there, sidestepping, and then throwing out some more attacks. This is extremely powerful, especially when coupled with a read. Instead of blocking your opponent's attack after throwing out something fast, instead of just blocking, like we said, you can try to make a read and sidestep something, and then throw out an attack, or bait out one of their attacks by sidestepping and then whiff punishing them. Or we can do something like sidestep to change up our timing, right? And then throw out some more attacks to be less predictable. Think of this as a way of introducing evasion to your attacks, or rather having elusive offense. Alright, so I wanted to do a quick case study. This is from Rev Major of this year. It's between Nobi Dragunov and JDCR Dragunov. I believe it's important to take a look at how this is done, at least at the pro scene, because I think this will give you guys some ideas. So this is round 2. JDCR lost round 1. Nobi took it. And watch how this game starts off. And Nobi sidesteps JDCR's attack, whiff punishes him, and then allows himself to get damage and plus frames on JDCR, which then sets up for his running 2 attack and to more pressure. So as you can see here, sidestepping is extremely powerful. All right, this is going to be game 2, round 1. Nobi took the first set between these two, and in this game, just watching Nobi play is just terrifying. Like, you would not want to have an opponent like this, because Nobi is literally fucking inside the matrix and just dodging all of JDCR's attacks and applying pressure at the same time. So you'll see that Nobi does some hits and then sidesteps, and then pressure, and then JDCR takes back, and then pressure, JDCR takes back, but Nobi then steps and then punishes and then goes for more pressure. So if you can somehow apply offensive sidestepping into your game, it makes you like 2 times as hard to hit, because you're not only moving, you're creating whiffs, you're attacking your opponent, you're getting plus frames where you normally wouldn't, and this just adds a whole new level of complexity for your opponent to deal with. And quite honestly, it can be very frustrating. If you've ever played any higher level opponent or a player, you'll know that sidestepping is so frustrating to play against, because you'll try to do some attack and then you whiff, and then you either get launched or they hit you, and it's just absolutely frustrating to deal with. And just one last time, for the sake of completeness, I guess, this is still game 2, round 2. Nobi took round 1. Just watch these two players play. Like, it blows my mind the sheer number of times that a move is sidestepped and how frequently these guys are applying sidesteps in between their attacks, right? Down for 1 sidestep, or jab sidestep. Apply these types of concepts to your game and you will become so much harder to hit, as well as it will allow you to open up so many doors that you did not think was even feasibly possible. Sidewalking. Now that we've talked about sidestepping, the next step, get it? We're talking about sidestepping. The next step. Yeah, if you didn't like this joke, blame my editor Mugglemog. He decided to put this in. Anyways, the next step is sidewalking. For starters, to sidewalk, simply double tap up and hold the input, or a double tap down and hold the input to move in the designated direction. Now, think of sidewalking as an extended sidestep, though not used in quite the same way. So here I'll go over 2 main instances, where you might wish to sidewalk instead of sidestep. Avoiding specific strings. Okay, most attacks in the game are actually fairly linear and can be avoided with a sidewalk, but not with a sidestep, because the rest of the hits will then clip you. This is because a single sidestep does not have enough clearance to avoid the remaining incoming barrage of attacks. However, with a sidewalk, we can continue to keep strafing away from the opponent in the direction that you're holding, thus continuing to step out of harm's way. Sidewalking is especially useful at a range. If the opponent starts to throw out a string and we've already begun our sidewalk, we usually can slip past our opponent's attacks and continue to walk and attack them from the rear. So sidewalking, fantastic for avoiding strings, especially at range. Avoiding specific attacks. Now, some attacks in this game cannot be avoided with a single sidestep, or it's possible but incredibly hard to use just one single sidestep to avoid. So let's use a classic example, Kazuya. We're going to take a look at this. Kazuya's infamous 50-50 mix-up, as you know, is incredibly powerful and absolutely mind-bogglingly frustrated to deal with if we don't learn to sidewalk, right? Kazuya's wave dash into forward 3 is a very powerful mid launcher that leads to great damage and wall carry, while his wave dash into hell sweep is a powerful low attack that knocks down and puts the opponent back into a 50-50 mix-up situation, right? So you can get hell swept again, and hell swept again because you guessed wrong. So in order to deal with a 50-50 like this, it's imperative to sidewalk left, because Kazuya has terrible tracking to his right side. So we have to walk to our left. Using sidewalk left, we can avoid the 50-50 mix-up almost completely. While it's possible to sidestep left if you properly time it to avoid the forward 3, or sidestep right in the right time to avoid the hell sweep, this is usually not advised. Why, you might ask? Well, do you know when they're going to toss out their attack? Sometimes if you time it right, great, awesome, you've avoided the mix-up, you sidestepped it properly. And if you time it wrong, then, well, you're going to either get launched or you're going to get hell swept. So for this reason, it's important to sidewalk. And yes, I know there are other things Kazuya can do to get away from us constantly sidewalking him left, but this is just an example where sidewalking is usually more advised than simply sidestepping. So now that we've taken a look at dealing with two specific attacks from Kazuya, we're going to take another look at another character, Paul. So here's one more example, which is Paul. It's generally not advised to sidestep or sidewalk Paul too much up close, because he's got a whole arsenal of great attacks for stopping opponents from moving laterally, right? He's got tons of great attacks that if you're sidewalking him at close range, he'll just bang, snuff you out right then and there. So this, however, changes as soon as the range differential changes, right? When you're no longer at range 1 or no longer at range 0, something like range 2 or range 3, then this completely changes. At range 2, more or less a lot of beginners, or even some intermediate Paul players actually, love to throw out two moves in particular at this range: Trooper Roll and Phoenix Smasher. And by sidewalking at this range, we can specifically avoid these two moves. So by sidewalking right, we can avoid Trooper Roll and then punish, or we can avoid Phoenix Smasher and then whiff punish. Caution, caution. So is sidewalking always better than sidestepping? This is probably the next question. Although sidewalking increases the amount of time we spend evading linear attacks, we are also more vulnerable simply because we're, well, moving laterally and not blocking for an extended period of time. But also we're basically just telegraphing to our opponent that we're just moving sideways. So throw out an attack that's going to hit us moving sideways. There is a time and place to sidestep, and there is a time and place to sidewalk. So hopefully this answers the question of should I always be sidewalking? And the answer is no. You're sidewalking when you're looking to specifically avoid certain attacks, and you sidestep when you're trying to just be a bit elusive. And I'm gonna go more in detail in the next section on which you should use and when. General rules on moving sideways. Alright, before I throw you out into the shit-filled ocean of online ranked, let me give you a few tips and ideas on where to start and when to start utilizing sidestepping and sidewalking. Here are some general rules and guidelines on when to move laterally. Out in the open. Okay, out in the open at around range 2 or 3 where no one really has any frame advantage or real advantage, you should not only be moving forwards and backwards or backwards and forwards, but also sideways, right? You should be walking sideways because very few characters have tracking moves at this range. So you might actually be quite pleasantly surprised at all the various things that you can dodge simply by sidewalking. And this is mostly true at the beginner and early intermediate stages because a lot of opponents want to try to reach you with their further reaching attacks, right? You're at range 3. They want to reach you with attacks that's going to hit from range 3. So instead of just, slowly inching and moving their way up, they're going to use some attack that's going to like lunge at you. So this is where sidewalking is going to be imperative versus sidestepping. On plus frames. So you got some plus frames from landing one of your attacks. Time to go in and pressure and mix the shit out of your opponent. Hop kick. Who the fuck hop kicks after I land an attack? Yeah, many players immediately go for pressure thinking, I just hit my opponent. It's my turn. And don't get me wrong, many times it is your turn. But sometimes you gotta be a little more unpredictable. After landing an attack that earns you something between +1 frame to +4 frames, try sidestepping, and then wait or throw an attack. You don't have to stand still and press buttons after earning plus frames, and you don't always have to constantly just stand there and try to mix up your opponent after getting plus frames, right? Sidestep on your own plus frames can evade an opponent attack and net you a hit, or hell, it could even net you a launcher. So next time that you're at +1 to +4 frames, instead of just hard mixing your opponent on this, try sidestepping, seeing what they do, and then pressing some more attacks like a jab or down forward 1 or down forward 2 or whatever. Because in these earlier ranks, you'll find that a lot of opponents either try to dick jab you or they'll try to hop kick you to interrupt you. And you can avoid these options if you sidestep and then try to create a whiff punish for that. On negative frames. Ah, crap, my attack just got blocked or I got hit and now I'm at -4. Guess my turn's over and I should just block or dick jab. Well, not necessarily. This is Tekken, like I said before, and not the run-of-the-mill 2D fighter game. Getting blocked or hit and ending up at negative frames doesn't always mean we've lost our turn. We still have an option to sidestep as a means of defense. If you think about it, if you're just going to give up your turn when you're at -1 or -4, this could be really advantageous for your opponent and really disadvantageous for you. Because say you're fighting somebody like an Armor King, right? There is a ton of ways that Armor King can mix you up. He can go for a grab, and you would have to guess between a 1 break, a 2 break, and a 1+2, or he can go for something like a down back 3 sweep, down back 4, hop kick. There's tons of ways that he could 50-50 you, right? And this would not be in your favor. So instead of just trying to dick jab your way out, because if you dick jab and he hop kicks, guess what? You just got launched. So as a rule of thumb, if you're at -4 to -1, try to sidestep and see which attacks you can avoid. Embrace the freedom of movement by sidestepping and sidewalking on your negative frames. And I realize that this is going to be really scary because you're like, oh, I just got hit. I shouldn't press a button. I should just block. Not always the case, because as soon as you figure out when you can actually sidestep and sidewalk this type of stuff, it's going to be a whole new world for you. Just start moving. For those of you who've been watching thus far, and I thank you in advance for doing so, and still don't feel like you have an idea of when to move sideways, here's one last suggestion. Just start stepping and walking. Just start stepping and walking. Moving laterally is quite possibly one of the hardest concepts to learn when jumping into Tekken, especially from a 2D game. So until you experience for yourself just how useful it is, it won't really sink in and become part of your gameplay and become second nature to you. Like any other thing in Tekken, you won't start using it until you figure out just how broken it is, right? All these attacks right here, and I'm gonna list all of them. Crossroads, please help me list all this stuff that I have right here, show it to them. All these things here that you see are through, I would say, hours, days, weeks, months, whatever, right? They've been ingrained into you because you've realized how broken it is to how often you're getting punished for it. And those of you who are high intermediates who are punishing this stuff, good on you. I'm just trying to show this as an example for the beginners and the lower intermediates. And those of you who are in advanced levels, I'm sure a lot of this stuff doesn't apply to you. Sorry. But all these attacks that you see that are getting thrown out, it's mostly because you figured out, wow, this stuff is broken. I should use the shit out of this, right? Well, until you see for yourself how powerful you can use sidewalking and sidestepping to your strategy, you're not going to use it. So it's the same is true for any move in Tekken, and this includes sidestepping and sidewalking. So for starters, just start sidestepping, sidewalking, and when you get a feel for it, it'll become second nature and it'll kind of click for you, right? Kind of how in Tekken there's a rhythm to the game, a back and forth. The same is true for sidestepping and sidewalking, and eventually you'll discover the right timing, and it's just, honestly, I can't explain it any other way than it will click. And you'll start linking moves into sidestepping. You'll start sidestepping and waiting for something, or sidestepping and then attacking, sidestepping and launching. All these things with due time, the more you practice it, the more you get it ingrained into your system to start sidestepping and sidewalking, the easier it will be. And the sooner you start, the better. And you're gonna get launched a whole bunch of times for trying to experiment and find out that timing. And when you do, though, when you figure it out, you're gonna feel like a god. Stepping direction. Now, one thing I want to bring to your attention is that more or less most characters have a weak side. And by weak side, I mean a side that a majority of their most popular attacks or useful attacks are weak on that side. So it's a good idea to step or walk in their weak direction. Let's use Lars as the first example, right? Lars is weak to his left side, which means we need to sidestep right or sidewalk right. And the reason for this is a lot of his most commonly used attacks will whiff on sidestep or sidewalk right. Now, keep in mind, not all his attacks, but a majority, or the most commonly and frequently used, will whiff on sidestep and sidewalk right. And this is why when you look at some of the sidestep charts, and by the way, yes, I will be linking a sidestep chart in all of this below in the descriptions, as well as a comment. So you can look at this chart and it will help you in determining if you're not sure how to play against a particular character. Just a quick rundown of which way to start stepping and start walking to at least get your feet wet and involved in moving laterally. So again, with Lars, he is weak to his left side. Therefore, we need to sidestep or sidewalk right. Fang, here is another example. Fang is weak to his right side, which means we need to sidestep or sidewalk left. And the reason for this, as you may have guessed it, is that the majority or most commonly used moves will whiff on sidestep or sidewalk left. And this holds especially true for stuff out of his Kempo step, right? Those of you who are like, oh my god, I don't know how to deal with Fang's Kempo stuff, like Kempo 3 or Kempo 2 or Kempo 1 or whichever. Sidewalk left, kind of like a Mishima. Now, this is not to say that Fang can't blow you up for this. He absolutely can. If you're playing against a competent player, they will notice this immediately and they will try to shut you down quickly. But the majority of his stuff that you want to try to avoid is going to be to sidestep, sidewalk left. Now, to cover my ass before the comments start pouring in, and yes, I'm very well aware that almost every character has some move that will cover their weak side to prevent them from being constantly stepped or walked in that direction. But I'm going to go for general and broad concepts here. General and broad concepts. And I'm not trying to go into 100% hardcore character specific breakdowns where it's like, oh, these 3 moves of this character can stop us from sidewalking or sidestepping left and right. And no, I'm going for broad strokes. So those of you who are not sure which way to start sidestepping and sidewalking a character, here's a little list in the descriptions, as I said, and in the comments below. Check that out. Hopefully this will at least give you an idea on where to start. You can go into the practice labs, do a jab, see which moves you can, evade from these characters. Just play around, figure out which moves you can sidestep, which moves you need to sidewalk, and which direction you need to sidestep and which direction you need to sidewalk. And again, the link that I'm having here and I'm displaying here, this is a great asset to use just to get started. This is not the end all be all, but just something for you to get started on, right? Oh boy. All right. Thank you so much for those of you who sat through all of this. I appreciate you guys for your patience. This video would not have been possible without the contributions from our patrons. Thank you so much for the support and love and your donations, patrons. It is very much appreciated. And thank you for the staff members here at Peter Y. Mao. Thank you so much, Crossroads. Thank you so much, Mugomog. You guys, either through editing the videos or editing the scripts, this has made my life so much easier. So those of you who have enjoyed this video, this was not solely done just by me. This was a team collaborated effort. Well, thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this content, please go ahead and leave me a like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. I would so much appreciate it. Helps me get my content out there, helps me reach new audiences, new horizons. Well, with that, thanks again, guys. I'm Peter, and I'm signing out. Till next time, guys. Till next time.